Now, pivoting a bit, we saw a series of unfortunate events this past weekend where some OpenSea users unknowingly signed malicious transactions and ultimately had their NFTs stolen. This was through a phishing attack, and there might always be risks of those and other social engineering hacks. But I'm curious from your perspective, what, if anything, about Clarity, Stack's smart contract language, might protect users against this kind of behavior in the future?
Yeah, so I think whenever some of these hacks or attacks or phishing type of things happen, there's always kind of like this urge that some people feel that, hey, look, if you would have used like this other type of a programming language, then this wouldn't happen. And I always want to be cautious of that, right? Like because there is no kind of like magic silver bullet here. It's a little bit like we should understand what the differences are and what could have been a little bit better if a language like Clarity would have been used. So I think there are basically two main things that come into play. The first is that the decision in Clarity to basically publish the source code, right? So you're forced to publish the source code at the blockchain level, and you can't just compile your code and publish the compiled code, which is mostly what people do with Solidity. And with OpenSea, it totally makes sense. It's a company, they want to kind of like protect their code base or whatever reason that they might have, that they have an open source, the OpenSea source code. So people actually don't really know what's going on with the OpenSea contracts, right? Which I'm a big believer that if a code is open source, especially when it comes to smart contracts, you're getting a lot more eyeballs on it. You're getting a lot of kind of like audits for free because so many people can poke around with the contract and report things and so on. So I think generally speaking, because Clarity forces you to open source everything, I think that's a good thing. But secondly, then people, when something goes wrong, people can actually replay certain attacks or study the code and try to figure out faster what's going on. So that is something you couldn't do. Like when people were trying to figure out that why are these NFTs being stolen, there's a little bit like the compiled code is like a black box, right? So they don't really know. They can't look inside the black box to know what is really going on. And then Clarity has this feature of post conditions, right? So they're very explicit post conditions that no matter what the contract was doing, in the end, here are some of your assets that are being moved. Are you really sure that you want this to happen? And that's a little bit of a very intentional thing. And post conditions are not like a very complicated thing. Like other languages can also try to have it, but Clarity makes it like super easy and very explicit for you to do this. And post conditions help with things like that, where you can train the users that in their wallet, because of post conditions, you can give them like very simple prompts that this is exactly what's happening. And do you agree? Do you want this to go forward? Otherwise, the post conditions would make the entire program abort. So that could have helped a little bit. And I think in the third thing would be that because Clarity makes like all the code paths very explicit, so these contracts can become a little bit easier to analyze, that if there is some sort of a bad path that can be triggered through a code. In this particular case, like it wasn't that there was a bug in the OpenSea implementation. This was just like a phishing attack. But generally speaking, I think that is a good feature to have, where you can analyze these programs, run them through a lot more thorough type of an analysis, and that is generally a good thing, not applicable to this particular thing that happened with OpenSea.